see Bunnings Hardware as a place of possibility. When I head home to the family farm, just south of the Queensland border, the dust and the heat can be stifling, inescapable, seeping into every pore. But when I step into Bunnings, I'm free. I love the feeling of going in there and getting to choose. Do I want to grab some power tools and head home for a chippy project? Do I want to pick up some plants and be a landscaper? Today, I'm a painter, grabbing some brushes for a new project. And so I stand in front of the paintbrushes. A couple of teenagers in their uniform muck around in front of me, and I'm a country kid, so I just stand and wait. I'm not in a hurry. Until one of them whips around, eyes connecting with mine, as a paintbrush lurches from his fingertips. And as it hits me fair in the chest, he spits, "Faggot." In that moment that I stood there in shock, I'd seen a flicker in his eyes, a change from the cold malice that I'd spotted to a warm tingle of panic that more mirrored mine. And then it began. "Miss, I'm so sorry. Ma'am, I really didn't mean to." And his friends joined in. "Miss, can we carry that for you? We're really sorry. He didn't realise. Miss, he didn't realise that you were, They carried my things to the car, and as we said our goodbyes, I realised that they thought I was a gay man. And I wonder what would have happened if I was. I also wondered what would have happened if I'd said to them, "Sorry, fellas, I'm not a man, or a miss, or a ma'am. I'm non-binary." Gender is the lens through which we see pretty much everyone that we come across. And I'll admit, that day I did look a little bit like Steve Irwin. I was in the khaki shorts and shirt for the farm. I had my hairy legs, my work boots, and my Akubra. And so they looked at me and they saw a man. But then, when his eyes locked with mine, he would have seen how much I love mascara, would have seen my cheekbones, maybe heard my voice, and switched to the only other option, right? A woman. But I am not a man or a woman. I am non-binary. It's an umbrella term that means different things to different people, but essentially, I don't identify as a man or a woman. Those two genders that we're told are the only and opposite options. That's the gender binary. For me, I describe it to people as being retired from gender. I certainly have it for a time, it was necessary, but I've got to a point in my life where I just don't need it anymore. I might dabble in gender as my retirement continues, but for now, I'm pretty happy leaving the 9 to 5 to the rest of you. I'm the gender grey nomad, off on my own adventure. And statistically speaking, most of you in this room, you are not grey nomads like me. You identify as a man or a woman, and you're so comfortable with that label that you may never retire. And that's fine by me. I'm not trying to get rid of men and women. I'm not trying to get rid of mums and dads, as Sky News would have you believe. No one's getting cancelled here. I simply don't understand how we think we can fit all of the craziness of human beings and their expression into two really strict boxes. And you might not feel that they're strict. You might not think you've ever been restricted by them. But let me tell you, you have. Have you ever seen women's pockets? In my men's chinos, and I'm not joking, in each pocket, I can fit an entire mango. In my women's pockets, I mean, they're not even real, but also my women's clothing, as a general rule, has a hard enough time just fitting me in it. And then there's the issue of haircuts, which apparently we have to pick a gender to go and get. I'm faced with the choice of, do I go to a men's barber shop and argue about whether or not they can cut my hair, whether or not I want clippers, which, spoiler alert, hair and clippers do not have a gender. Or I can go to a women's salon and simply pay 4 times the amount for the same haircut. And then I have to go about parking my car. Now, I drive a Ford Ranger, and on a number of occasions I've been reversing it into a car spot, only to look in my rearview mirror and see a man there, it's always a man, flapping his arms around. And I have to get out of that car and go and explain that it is much more difficult to park when there is a foreign person standing in the middle of your car park. And thank you for the assumption, but I don't need directions. You see, gender is a construct. Gender is a challenge that I have had to overcome. And jokes aside, this gender binary is a very clever trap. It's convinced us all that men and women are so different that we need different pants, different pockets, different haircuts, and different cars, even though those things are not connected to our gender at all. They're different because we're different human beings with different preferences. This two-choice system stifles me as much as the dust and the heat in my hometown. And I thought naively that when I was headed off to university, looking at the dust below behind the Land Cruiser, leaving behind Nulla Manor, population just 40, I thought that I was going to get my Bunnings moment of freedom. I thought I was going to get to choose. But instead, all anyone wanted to know was whether I was a man or a woman. It's kind of left me feeling like Aldi in the Coles and Woolies duopoly, trying to convince people that I am good, just different. But it hasn't really made much of a difference. People still assume that I'm a woman wherever I go. I get ma'am when I step onto an aeroplane, darling and sweetheart when I drop my car in for a service. And every day as a primary school teacher, I'm still Miss Worsley. I have struggled for much of my life to be seen as who I really am. And I still struggle every single day because the system is just not built for people like me. It can be a serious challenge to try and overcome, and often it's not as harmless as a paintbrush to the chest. Although when that happened, I drove the whole way home sobbing, the dust sticking to my face. But before I got home, I pulled over, dried my tears, and resolved not to tell my family because I feared that I would not get support from them. I feared that they wouldn't understand. I have at times feared for my life or my friends' lives. And it's not because we identify ourselves as non-binary, the word's never used. It's because we have the gall to step outside of the boxes, to be visibly different. That is enough to put me in danger. And so I ask you, is the binary more important than my safety? Than our freedom? These moments aren't always so big and so massive. Sometimes they are tiny. The dust sometimes settles in such a fine layer that you don't even notice it until you wipe a section clean and it all comes into sharp focus. I want you to imagine now a basketball court with a perfect line of kindergarten children walking across it. It is our imagination, after all. We can have a little treat of pretending that kindergarten children walk in straight lines. Pretty much never happens in my experience, but on this day they were doing a pretty good job. And in your periphery looms a bundle of high schoolers lumbering towards my line, the kids not even in their line of vision. And they hit it. Scatter my kindy kids across the court, their little light-up shoes bouncing their way back towards me. And I reprimand those boys. You need to stop and look where you're going. Do not walk straight through my line of little people. Geez, miss, chill out, calm down. In a binary view of gender, 50% of us are not allowed to be assertive or authoritative. We're locked out of leadership positions. We're told that in order to succeed, we need to work like, communicate like, or act like a man, whatever that means. But then we're also reprimanded when we do embody those stereotypes. And on the flip side of the binary, the blokes aren't having a great time either. Here in Australia, we've got a sense of masculinity that is tied to a lack of emotional vulnerability. We don't encourage men to seek help, to check in on their mates, to cry. And the statistics for male suicide rates and mental ill health reflect that. I truly hope that I am getting across to you that this is not about being non-binary. This is about all of us, because we all live in a world with gender. All the gender binary has ever sought to do is to divide, to conquer, and to then create a hierarchy. That might be on an individual level, but when we talk about systems, about society, it contributes to massive issues like sexism, domestic violence, and political misogyny. But to that end, I do want you to forget about me for a minute. It's hard to do, I know. I am on a giant red circle with a microphone. I haven't shut up now for about 15 minutes. But if it helps, lower or close your eyes. Are you a woman with short hair? You're feeling it. Are you a bloke who likes the taste of a cocktail more than a beer? You're tasting it. Are you a woman who doesn't shave her legs, who drives a manual car? A man who loves a rom-com and just doesn't see the damn point of football? You're all living it. You are breaking the binary. You are experiencing what it's like to be restricted by your gender. And when I say this, people like to jump in and tell me, well, Han, you're taking it too far. Back in my day, my favourite saying, we just had men and women and it worked just fine. But that's not true. Non-binary people and genders have been around since the dawn of human civilization. Right here in Australia, we've got the Indigenous First Nations people, the oldest living culture on the planet, and they've got the brother boys and sister girls, a transgender community deeply embedded into their culture. And you go further afield and you've got the Fa'afafine in Samoa, you've got the Two-Spirit people in North America. This is not a phenomenon. This is who we really are, and we have been here forever, only pushed to the sidelines by colonisation and oppression, convinced that we didn't exist or that we couldn't be who we truly were. And so I ask you to reflect on your own culture, on your own upbringing. It's a very important step I ask you to take with me to help break the binary. I know that I was taught back home in Nulla Manor that I could spot men and women. I could pick them based on whether they had long hair, they cared for the kids, they drove a tractor, they walked out of the bottle-o with a case of beer under their arm. I didn't mention a gender, but you all knew exactly who I was talking about. These are the barriers we need to break. The truth is, I have found freedom from gender in many of the spaces I exist in nowadays, and I want you to find that freedom as well. With that freedom, we can speak up in board meetings without worrying about talking too much. With that freedom, we can drink the drinks we want, wear the clothes that make us feel good, listen to the music that makes us happy, without worrying about harassment or judgment because of the gender we're supposed to be. With that freedom, today I put on a suit with the heels. I'm wearing the short hair with the lipstick. And it's not because I'm desperately trying to be within or break free from a binary. It is simply because this is who I am. And so I hope that you can now look out at your future with me, to see it in front of you, to stare down that dusty road and see only a place of possibility.